Hey everybody, Bandicoot Commando here, and welcome back to Marvel Rivals. Last time, I read the Thing's lore story. What's it called? Gangs of Yancey Street, and this one surprisingly, actually picked up with Panther's lore story because Ben was on a mission to find a friend, and said friend was T'Challa because after his encounter with Dracula, yeah, Ben sees for himself that he's been converted. But even in his vampiric state, T'Challa is able to hold strong of not giving in to the bloodlust, and more importantly, he was slowly building a small following of vampires himself. I guess he was ready to see if he can take the battle to Dracula this way. You know what they say, if you can't beat them, or more like, if you can't beat them as you are now, join them and beat them from the inside. However, Ben does urge T'Challa to take the heart-shaped herb he brought with him to cure himself, and it did the trick, but T'Challa's group of vampires immediately turned and attacked, and it's during that time that Reed shows up and uses a miniaturized version of the TRD. It reverses all the damage caused from the scuffle, but the downside is that it also reverses T'Challa's curing, so he was back to being a vampire again. But on the bright side, the group of vampires of the group of vampires that were there though got turned back into human. So that at least was a sign that there is hope to fix and reverse everything, at least in the New York of vampires. So today, we're going to read on Thor's lore story, but before we do, I want to go over a little quick thing. Two of them, really. One, as you can probably notice, is that the update that came to the game recently was that they added a thing where anytime you change your character's skin, it will match the icon here on the selection. So yeah, you can see which skins I have currently equipped on some of my characters. Another thing that they changed, and I'll demonstrate on Ben here, was that they actually added a separate they added a separate wheel for sprays and emotes. They've split them into two. So now I've been kind of rearranging the emotes as I want them, and the sprays, I mean, the sprays are still here and the same, but now whenever you're in gameplay and you want to use either an emote or a spray, you hold down the, because of my controller here, hold down the left on the D-pad, and if you want to switch between spray or emote, press either L2 or R2 to switch between the two. Alright, so let's get to Thor. Thor, Odin's son. The son of Thor... Oh, the son of Odin taps into his divine power to call forth thunder and lightning, raining down relentless fury upon his enemies. With his mighty hammer Mjolnir... Come on, I should know how to pronounce it. Mjolnir in hand, Thor effortlessly asserts his dominance on the field of combat. I only have two of his skins so far. First would be how he appeared in Thor: Love and Thunder. Despite how that movie turned out, Helmsworth admitted that the reason it probably felt bad was that he allowed himself to get caught up of acting goofy and silly with Thor, get all caught up in the ad-libbing. Anyway, I need to figure out exactly who I am. And we have this one, Reborn from Ragnarok. Where there is Thor, there is Asgard. Oh, whoops, I meant to, yeah. Yep, all in Nordic runes. Thor Odinson, Prince of Asgard and God of Thunder. Thor Odinson is one of the bravest warriors the cosmos has ever known. With his enchanted hammer in hand, Thor summons the full fury of the storm to smite his foes, but only if he proves himself worthy of Mjolnir's might. Alas, Thor has suffered greatly since the time stream entanglement. When the All-Father was forced to enter his regenerative Odin sleep, Thor and his brother Loki battled for the throne. Through deceit and trickery, Loki bested his brother, exiling Thor to a distant and dangerous timeline. Gone with the Thunder. Boom! Thor sat in the Tower of Solitude, the library prison once used by All-Father Odin. Hunched over a stone bench in a stone room, the tower's sole prisoner on the orders of his brother. He fumed silently, waiting for the chance to act, and fearing what fate might befall Asgard if he could not act soon. Boom! From outside came rhythmic impacts, as something powerful hurled itself against the tower's walls. Thor could only wait. Loki had outwitted him, duping him into entering the tower and imprisoning him there. As one might expect of a clever usurper as Loki, the room was enchanted to stifle any sound he might utter. Boom! Dust and mortar drifted from one wall of Thor's cell. He stood. It was almost time. Loki might have betrayed him and made his devious play for the throne of Asgard, but even Loki could not think of everything. Boom! It had not occurred to him, for example, that Thor could call Mjolnir without making a sound. Boom! Mjolnir exploded through the wall of the Tower of Solitude and met Thor's extended hand. He gave a shout, relieved to hear the sound of his voice again. Brother! With its walls shattered, the Tower of Solitude... Oh. Wait, what? Oh. I thought he was going in a long range. Okay. So, brother, with its walls shattered, the Tower of Solitude no longer held its enchantments. More quietly than his initial challenge, Thor added, "You have a surprise in store." He flew through the hole, over the city of Asgard, and toward the palace. Yggdrasil's roots arched far overhead. Loki had crews at hard labor tapping the world tree sap, which was rich in chronovium. Thor had no doubt that Loki would cut a deal with the dwarves or anyone else who could use the rich sap to create magical weapons or instruments. If he hadn't already, chronovium had also transformed Loki's magic, making him even more powerful. But Thor felt it too. It glimmered in the carvings of Mjolnir's Urum head. He felt it even in the Odin force. Now Loki would feel it too. He shouted out his brother's name, letting the challenge echo across the city. Your plan didn't work, brother. You see, I'm free. And Loki was there, manifesting in the air just out of Thor's reach. On the contrary, brother, my plan is working perfectly. Do you not think I anticipated you would solve this problem the only way you ever solve any problem? He smirked. That is to say, with brute force. The smirk was the opening Thor needed. the single moment of inattention that always got Loki in trouble. He seized Loki and dropped to the ground, smashing his brother into the stones of Asgard's palace plaza. He raised Mjolnir, but Loki stung Thor's hand with a short knife and twisted away. How long had they been inexorably moving toward this moment? Centuries? Tens of centuries? I have tried, Thor thought. I tried to make him feel like one of us, but Loki only ever looks out for Loki. And now, again, Asgard's future hangs in the balance. I knew you had escaped the tower before you were all the way through the hole, Loki sneered. It always makes me chuckle when you scream, brother, like when we were children. And yet you have answered my call, Thor shot back. If you could have stopped me, why the charade? Or charade? Oh, brother, Loki said, twisting the word. You know I love a charade, and by escaping, you have helped settle a little dispute I was having. You see, a certain someone who may shortly be joining our conversation did not believe you would escape. And now that you have, she will doubtlessly see the wisdom of my proposed course of action. As if he had summoned it, a portal opened. Through it, Thor saw the unmistakable landscape of Hell, bleak and dark and endless. Hela's legions of dead were on the march, Chronovium glittering in their empty eyes. Hela herself leading them on. Space bent around her, and in the next instant she had stepped through the portal. Loki, she said, I see you let your brother escape. He is more resourceful than he seems, Loki said, keeping a wary eye on Thor. Or were you overconfident? Hela countered. Hardly, Loki snapped. I have anticipated everything thus far. Of course he would break down the tower's walls and come to find me. If I were a creature of muscle and rage, with just enough brain to speak, that is what I would do. And of course, at the moment, he was seeking his revenge, which he thinks of as protecting Asgard from me. You would make your grand entrance, because even more than me, Hela, you love to be the center of attention. Loki spread his arms, taking in the situation. Where was I wrong? You betrayed Asgard to Hela? Rage nearly blinded Thor. Lightning crackled from Mjolnir and from Thor's eyes as the Odin force rose within him. This was unforgivable treason. Again! How many times had Loki done this, or tried to? And now with the mortal Doctor Doom upending time and space, he was doing it again? Asgard was always destined to be mine, Loki said. The All-Father sleeps while the realms are torn apart by scheming mortals. We do nothing as so-called heroes. We do nothing as so-called heroes blunder through their failed solutions to the problem. I intend to change that, but I cannot do that while you lumber around getting in the way. So, he gestured toward the portal. When Thor looked that way, he saw that the portal had enlarged 100-fold, and the legions of the dead were upon him. They came in seemingly endless waves, eyes empty and mouths opened in snarls of mindless hate. Thor tore great swaths through them with Mjolnir, lightning breaking apart Hela's armies. Asgardians, dark elves, trolls of Jotunheim, the denizens of all the 10 realms came together, and Hela's legions, since death alone united every race connected to the world tree. Thor fought them alone, while Hela and Loki watched, as if he was a gladiator whose life was their entertainment. He shattered them with Mjolnir, annihilated them with lightning. But cawing over Hela's legions were an endless flock of Nostron crows, hellish creatures that Thor's blows could not destroy. They swooped and pecked and clawed, and no matter how Thor struck at them, they reformed from clouds of black feathers and came at him again. No help was coming. Asgard was crippled by fear of Loki. The Valkyr and the Crimson Hawks were away from the city, fighting pointless wars in other realms. Another maneuver by Loki to leave the city defenseless. All that stood between Asgard and Hela's legions was Thor himself. So be it, he thought. He would strike them down until he could no longer raise his arm. That time was coming. He slew crows by the thousand, and yet their numbers were undiminished. He was still the Odin's son, god of thunder, but even gods grew old, and Thor felt the centuries in his bones as he shattered the lava-crusted skeleton of a Muspelheim fire demon and unleashed a blast of lightning that tore a great hole in Hela's ranks, reaching across the plaza into the portal itself. If he can only close it. But no, he had not the magic. He would fight until he fell and earned his passage to Valhalla. Then, just as Thor had abandoned hope, Hela prolonged his misery. "I tire of this game," she said. With a gesture, she dispelled her armies. The sudden silence in the plaza was jarring, broken only by the cawing of Hela's crows, who remained fluttering and squawking over the broad plaza before the palace of Asgard. One Adlit. I don't feel like that's not the right word, but one alit on Hela's shoulder as Thor calmed his battle frenzy and turned to face her. If she wanted single combat, he would offer it. But he was tired, and Hela's magic was mighty. He had no faith that he would survive, or that Loki would intervene on his behalf. But she did not strike him down. "Thor," she said, "the die is cast." I would say the dice is cast, but the die is cast. Asgard is Loki's. Your father abandoned it, and you could not protect it. Now Loki will. With a diabolical smile, she added, "And of course, I will offer my own guidance." "None of the realms will survive if you destroy the balance among them," Thor said. "You will bring Ragnarok." "No," Hela said. "The universes and the realms are torn asunder and remade, doomed by those meddling mortals whose names for once speak true. The old ways, the old balances, they no longer apply. And you, Thor Odinson, are but a stumbling block, interfering with a new vision of the 10 realms and beyond." Thor flexed his arms to strike at her, but a powerful enchantment held him fast. Such was her power that he had not seen her make a motion or speak a spell. "The old must make way for the new," Hela said, "and sooner or later, everyone will make way for the dead." Thor could see Loki just behind Hela, looking smug and completely in control as he created a portal from his newly tapped chronobium. But how long before the trickster understood that Hela was playing her own tricks? The brothers locked eyes. Thor knew Loki could read his expression, even though he could not speak. "This is not over, brother. I am coming for you, and when I do, no god or magic in the 10 realms will save you." "Goodbye, Odin's son," Hela sneered, her dark power ensnaring him, and with a toss of her glorious hand, Thor was flung on a journey into mystery. Oh, we gotta make reference to Journey into Mystery. He fell from the sky, trailing fire, and his impact left a ring of scorched ground, 1,000 feet across. When Thor stood, the echoes of his landing were still sounding in the dry hills that surrounded him. He was in a desert, and with those hills receding in all directions under a sky that glowed an infernal red, he had never seen this place before. It was Midgard, certainly, but not the Earth he knew. Loki's sorcery had flung him very far from home indeed. Thinking of his brother got Thor moving. Whatever Earth this was, he needed to find allies to accompany him back to Asgard and remove Loki from the throne before Loki's scheming backfired and Hela ruled all the 10 realms. But where to go? On the horizon, he could see what might be a small city. Lights blazed around a tall tower. He would start there. Then he saw something rise up into the sky from near the tower. It grew rapidly, silhouetted against a red sun, and Thor realized it was moving toward him, and very fast. He had just gotten Mjolnir up in front of him when a giant came screaming down out from the sky, smashing Thor into the bottom of a new impact crater. Thor felt his power rebuilding within him, along with his battle fury. He released both in a blow from Mjolnir that knocked the giant back out of the crater. Thor leapt up after him. Mjolnir poised for another blow, and he saw his opponent was none other than the Hulk, but a different Hulk, crackling with a vivid green energy, and even bigger than the last time Thor had seen him, wearing a belt featuring various lights and devices. "Banner!" Thor cried out, dodging a swipe of Hulk's massive fists. "What sorcery is this?" Hulk roared and smashed Thor into the ground again. Very well, Thor thought. He knew his one-time ally was prone to unthinking rages when in battle. Sometimes he had to be brought out of them another way. Hulk's next punch met the head of Mjolnir, swung with all Thor's might. The blast wave from that collision knocked them both sprawling. Thor was up first. He leapt in a high arc over Hulk, coming down to deliver a mighty hammer blow to Hulk's belt. Gamma energy exploded out, searing Thor's eyes and knocking him flat. Dazed, he tried to get to his feet. When he could see again, the monstrous Hulk was gone, and Banner sat in the shreds of his clothes and shattered pieces of his belt. "Oh," he said. "Thor." He rubbed his face as he stood. His expression swiftly changed as he registered that it was actually Thor who stood before him. "Thor? Do you know how long we've been looking for you?" Thor didn't know. He didn't know where they were or what Banner was talking about, and he didn't care. All that mattered was Asgard. "Banner," he said, "I need your help." Well, all right then, that was Thor's lore story. I was wondering like how we were gonna get to this up to this moment, because after reading Hela's and Loki's, it was gonna build up to this. And Thor obviously has dialogue with Loki about being trapped in the Tower of Solitude, so I was curious to know like what this whole lore would have been. And now we know that he was sent to Earth, and I'm guessing this slightly connects to Banner's story, seeing how the two of them meet up, but who knows what this is. We'll have to find out in a different lore story. Anyway, that'll do for this episode of Marvel Rivals. Join me next time as I read Venom's lore story. That is it, and I will see you guys next time.